Hey there, CJ Math students, and welcome to homework 2.22, operations with rational numbers. So I'm going to do a lot of this homework with you because these are the types of problems you will see on tomorrow's test, and you want to make sure that you understand them. So for number one, let's look through this problem first, and always change any subtraction that we see to adding the opposite. So here I see subtraction plus a negative. This just means that's negative 12.2. Now, hopefully you can say, there's some stuff I can move around using the commutative property of addition. I see a negative 2 1/5. I see a positive 2 1/5. So doing that, 2 1/5 plus negative 2 1/5. I didn't even have to split those numbers. The reason why, because I know they're going to cancel out. And then plus negative 12.2 plus 5.5, right? This is the additive inverse. It adds up to 0. So 0 plus negative 12.2 plus 5.5. This is a DSSM. Because it's a DSSM, I'll actually need to subtract, so I'll do 12.2 minus 5.5. Notice how I've lined up my decimals. I need to borrow on this one. So borrow from the 2, that becomes a 1, this becomes a 12. 12 minus 5 is 7. I need to borrow again, or I can just say 11 minus 5, but I'll do it just so you guys can see. 11 minus 5 is 6, 6.7, and it's negative 6.7. Number 2, again, I see the subtraction. So I go plus a negative. I can't just smush them together because they're different signs, so I need to borrow. So 7 becomes 6 plus 5 over 5 plus negative 1/5. This problem will definitely be on your test tomorrow. So it's 6, and this is a DSSM, different sign, subtract, keep the sign that you have more of. So 5 plus negative 1 is actually 5 minus 1, which is 4. So we have 6 and 4/5. Let's take a look at number 3. We have minus a negative, so that becomes plus a positive. Remember, you always have to do plus a positive or plus a negative when you see negative signs. So it becomes 5 1/2 plus 1/4. Now here's where you need to either get creative and say, oh, well, that's 5.5 and that's 0.25 and add it together, or say, hey, I know how to find common denominators by just simply multiplying by 2. Either one works. So that's 5 2/4 plus 1/4, and that just gives you 5 3/4. Very simple problem. Let's look at number 4. We got negative 2.1 plus 5.3 plus 1/10 plus 2.1 minus, so I change that to plus a negative 5.3. Use the commutative property of addition. Let's go ahead and put negative 2.1 plus positive 2.1 next to each other. And then let's go ahead and put 5.3 plus negative 5.3 next to each other. And then don't forget that you have this lonely 1/10 all by itself. So in doing that, hopefully you realize that, hey, this is 0. This is also the additive inverse in 0. So it's just 0 plus 0 plus 1/10. And so your answer is 1/10. Right? Look at number 5. 3/5 plus 20 plus 0.3 plus 5 3, or minus a negative 5 3/5, which becomes plus a positive. So let's use, this time let's actually split. So 3/5 plus 20.3 plus, this is 5, and this is a positive 3/5. Now let's use commutative property of addition. 3/5 plus 3/5 plus 20.3 plus 5. Right? This becomes not, they don't cancel out because they're not opposites, so it becomes 6/5 plus 25.3, right? 20.3 plus 5 is just 25.3. Let's move this over here. 6/5 is really 1 1/5 plus 25.3. 1 1/5, if you look at your reference sheet, 1/5 is 0.2, so it's really 1.2, right? 1 1/5 is 1.2.
Mr. Closer, this
so 1.2 plus 25.3, you can do some mental math on that. 0.2 and 0.3, that's 0.5. 25 plus 1, that's 26. So 26.5, or 26 1/2. Number 6, I'm going to allow you to do. Actually, no, I'll do it with you. So 10 plus split them, that's negative 5 plus negative 3/8. Remember, if the whole number is negative, the fraction is negative. Now, don't borrow anything yet. Do the actual subtraction. 10 plus negative 5 is 5 plus negative 3/8. Now borrow. So 5 divided by 5, or 5 borrowing 1, looks like 4 plus 8 over 8 plus negative 3/8. So that's 4 5/8 is your answer. Number 7 I'm going to let you do because it's exactly like number 6. Number 8 I'm going to let you do because it's very similar to number 5. All right? Let's look here. So now when we're multiplying and dividing rational numbers, you look to cross-cancel. You also remember that you're using DSN or SSP. So here if I count, I have 2 negatives, so my answer is positive. This is a good way for you to show your work tomorrow on your tests, saying I have 2 negatives, but my answer is positive. So 0.5 times 10 times 2. It doesn't matter what you multiply in what order because the commuter property of multiplication says you can do it in any order. So I like to do 10 times 2, which I know is 20, and then 20 times 0.5. I could do this multiplication, or I could just say, hey, this is saying what's half of 20? That's all that's saying. And the answer is 10, right? If you did it the other way, what's half of 10? That's 5. 5 times 2 is 10. Doesn't matter. You'll get the same answer. Number 10, you're going to want to make sure that you write them as fractions. So first of all, I have 3 negatives. Not negative 3, but just 3 negatives. So my answer should be negative. Now if you do that, you put a negative in your answer sign, and then you just ignore them. So 1/6 times, put this over 1, 6 over 1 times 2 over 1. We look to cross cancel. We don't have to flip anything because it's multiplication. So 6 and 6 can cross cancel. They both become 1, and then we just multiply straight across, right? So 1 times 1 is 1, times 2 is 2. 1 times 1 times 1 is just 1. So negative 2 is my answer. Over to the back side. Again, when you have whole numbers, put them over 1. Notice that you have 2 negatives, so 2 negatives. So your answer will be indeed positive. So you don't have to worry about the negatives at all. So I'll say 3/4 times 8 over 1 times 4 over 1. Now let's look to cross cancel. 4 and 8 can both be divided by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is, sorry, not 1, but 2. Let's multiply straight across. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. 1 times 1 times 1 is just 1. So your answer is positive 24. Right? I'm going to let you do number 12. It's very similar to the problems we've done. I'll do number 13. So we have 3 negatives. So my answer, because we have 3 negatives, will be negative. So look to cross cancel. I'm actually going to move this a little bit. I'm going to say 3/4 times 8/9 times 2/3 because I feel like I can cross cancel a little bit more with these guys. So I just use the commuter property of multiplication to rearrange this problem. 4 and 8, as we know, can both be divided by 4. So that's been 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 3 and 9 can both be divided by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. I'm just going to go ahead and multiply straight across. 1 times 2 is 2. And then 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 3 is 3. And then 3 times 3 is 9. So negative 4/9 is your answer because we had 3 negatives. All right, I'm going to let you guys do number 14. Again, look to use the commuter property of multiplication. In number 15, finding the quotient, remember you want to flip the second fraction and then multiply. So let's go ahead and do that. Negative 1, oh, so first of all I have 2 negatives, so my answer is going to be positive, so I don't have to worry about my negatives anymore. So this is 1 over 1 times 1 over 8, because I flipped it. There's nothing to cross cancel. I just multiply straight across. And what do I get? I get 1 over 8, so positive 1/8. In number 17, remember if I have a mixed number, I have to change it to an improper fraction first. So that's 4 times 3 is 12. Add it to 1, you get 13 over 1, still divided by 13 over 3. And now I have 1 negative. Because I have 1 negative, my answer will be negative. All right. So I'll put a negative sign right there. So now I want to flip. And then I have 13 over 1 times 3 over 13. Beautiful about this is the 13s cancel out. Both become 1. Multiply straight across. And I get my answer of 3 over 1, right? Or negative 3. Sorry, that's an ugly looking 3, so I'll say negative 3. Right? We'll do 18 together as well. So I'll say 7 over 1, flip this fraction, times 3 over 7. As we move our way down again, we also need to flip negative 1 over 10. So that becomes times 10 over 1. Now I have one negative, so my answer will be negative. I have a negative for my answer. I can cross cancel. 7 and 7, they both become 1. Then I multiply straight across. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 10 is 30. 1 times 1 times 1 is just 1. So negative 30 is my answer. So that was a 0. Lastly, on the bottom here, I'm going to do 19 with you. We're trying to do all these properties. So the negative, so first of all, 6 parentheses 2 plus 4 is the same thing as 6 times 2 and 6 plus 6 times 4. That's a distributive property. We haven't learned about it just yet, but we will. 6 plus a negative 6 equals 0. Hopefully you remember that's the additive inverse. 6 times 0 equals 0. Anything equals 0, that's the 0 product. Negative 6 times a negative 4, that's going to be a positive product because it's going to be equal to a positive 24. Negative 6 times 4 is going to be a negative 24, so that's going to be, a negative product. Sorry, I erased that. And lastly, 6 times 2 is the same thing as 2 times 6. Obviously, that's the Commuter property of multiplication. All right, I'll let you do number 20. Basically, what you want to remember to do is flip these and multiply, and then match them up with the correct answer after you flip and multiply. That's it. Call me if you have questions. Study for your test tonight.